This has been absolutely off the hook. Like, it's been really amazing. I have met so many amazing women with incredible stories. And I had several people come up and say that I had to get Natalie in this chair because your story is really awesome. And you are a published author multiple times. So Natalie, if you can share with us who you are and what's your story.
Okay, so my name is Natalie, and I founded an organization, and it's called Nothing But Love Notes. And it really started when my mother was ill. She was diagnosed with cancer. And she was the strongest woman I knew, but as soon as she got that diagnosis, she just turned into a shell. And it was really hard for me. And I turned into her caregiver. She didn't really want to share it with any of the other family. She kind of leaned on me, and it was really difficult. And so one Valentine's Day, I was sitting on the couch feeling sorry for myself. She was in her room. She wouldn't come out. She wouldn't eat. And I'm like, this is not who she raised me to be. So I went in there, I said, we're doing something. It's Valentine's Day. We're getting out of this house. I had a drawer full of thank you notes. So we sat down, I got her out to the kitchen table, and we wrote 50 thank you notes. She wanted to write to veterans. She had an affinity for veterans. We wrote 50 thank you notes, went out, and we just set out on a mission. And we started looking for them. We found them by their license plates. We would leave notes on their cars. We found an old Korean War veteran in the grocery store. And he told us instantly, he started to tremble when I gave him the note. And he says, I never talk about my story. And 30 minutes later, we knew his whole story. We knew the names of his buddies that he served with, friends that he had lost. And from that moment on, my mother was smiling. And so we did it every day since. We'd go to Starbucks, we'd write notes. We would keep them in our purse. And when we'd see a police officer, we'd stop and hand it to him. And it just opened up these conversations, these connections that we would have lost if we would have been home feeling sad. And it changed our dialogue as mother and daughter. You know, suddenly we were talking more on a more positive note and doing something that meant something. And then suddenly we had a following because my son said, you need a Facebook page. So we had this following, and people were reaching out saying, I got your note, and connecting. And now so many of them are like family to me. And I lost my mother in 2017. But I looked up and I was surrounded by this family that I had gained from a love note. And it changed my life. I met the love of my life. He came to one of my events. I wasn't even in the mode of looking for him. So it was all kind of just a beautiful accident.
Amazing. Wow. I absolutely agree with you. I tend to just blurt things out as opposed to being as eloquent with writing a note.
Yeah.
But I do agree with when you recognize others, when you put time and energy into others, that it actually comes back three folds to yourself.
Yeah, it does. And we started this to help ourselves, to get out of that scared place we were in.
Yeah.
And suddenly grown men who had served in every war or were police officers, firefighters, were breaking down in tears and telling us their hardships and their stories. And suddenly you realize you're not alone. You know, you're among people who are going through stuff too. And you catch them off guard like that with a note, you know, with the guy behind you in line at the grocery store. They're not expecting that they're going to be crying, you know. And I always tease that that's my superpower, is that I bring grown men to tears, you know. I make grown men cry.
You make grown men cry. I make my husband cry on occasion, but I don't think it's for that same reason. So in your book, I want to talk a little bit. So this now is preemptive to the book.
Yes.
The book. So tell me a little bit about the book and the journey of becoming a published author.
Okay, so the book, I always knew that I wanted to write these stories because there's so many that were so beautiful, the connections that I made. But it was hard to wrap my head around it after losing my mother. She was my best friend. And so to kind of have to relive that and put it into words was hard. And trying to capture her, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah. So I kind of put it off. But then I just couldn't put it off any longer. And once I started digging in and going back, it just came. And I was able to write it within about a year and a half. And I think having it in my hand now is just like I don't know. It's testimony to just how you can go from the darkest day in your life to something really beautiful.
It's also testimony to your mother and how she helped raise you and bring you into the woman you are.
Yeah.
And then the legacy you leave behind. Because every time we leave something behind that is positive, I believe it counters something that would be negative in this world.
I think so too.
I absolutely.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you would encourage others to do who are going through a dark or in a dark space?
Yeah.
Obviously writing the notes, but even just having the energy or the forethought to pick up note cards.
Yeah.
Like, what is something that you would share with people in that space? Because that's a really hard space to be in.
It is hard. It's hard. You know, I couldn't even imagine how I was going to survive her. It wasn't even, I never thought that this would be something that would get me through. It was just, in that moment, let's do something. Because I was sitting on the couch near tears. She was in her room. I'm like, we just have to do something. So you're doing something with our hands, sitting down and doing something. And it was, like I said, we didn't have a plan that this was going to turn out like this. Just finding the faith that you have it in you to get up and move that day. I couldn't even go months down the road because I knew I was going to lose her. It was just what am I grateful for today, and what can I do to ease somebody else's pain or suffering? Because I was starting to see that these notes were helping other people. So just finding that bit of faith, and all you need is faith the size of a mustard seed. I mean, my mother used to tell me that all the time. You just need the tiniest bit that everything's going to be okay. And even when she was sick, she would say, all is well. And that helped me too. So just finding one reason to get out of bed. And I knew that she didn't raise me to shrink into the darkness. She raised me to get up and do something.
So show the book, and tell us where they can find it.
This is available on Amazon right now.
Name of the book?
All Because of a Love Note.
All Because of a Love Note. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting something good in this world.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me share my story. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Milky Way stuff.